On it. Okay, welcome to the Sunset Advisory Commission, December 6th, 2021.
Yes, here we are. I didn't grab any. Oh, there. Yeah. So, do we want to just jump right in?
I think we can.
Should we?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, but Madam Chair, just should we introduce ourselves just briefly for anybody who's,
Sure.
I guess we can.
just in case.
Rob, you want to start?
Oh, sure. I'm Rob LeClaire. I am the junior representative of Barry Town, and I sit on government operations. I am the ranking.
Oh,
Oh,
impressive.
Mine's shorter. My name is Matt Kraus. I'm one of the two gubernatorial appointees.
Brian Collmore, State Senator from Rutland County. I sit on Senate Agriculture in the morning and Senate Government Operations in the afternoon.
I'm Jeanette White, Senator from Windham County, and I sit on Judiciary in the morning and chair Government Operations in the afternoon. And we don't have ranking members.
Oh,
No,
Imagine that.
interesting. I'm Representative John Gannon. I'm Vice Chair of Government Operations, and I am from Wilmington and represent Halifax, Whitingham, and Wilmington in southern Vermont.
Erin?
Cameron Aberdaily, Legislative Council.
And
Andrea Hudson, Committee Assistant.
Yep, who's also House Government Operations Committee Assistant.
so with that, I guess we can just jump right in.
Right.
Join us at the table?
Sure. Do you mind if I bring Dirk up with me?
I suppose. Sorry. Amanda, it is good to see you in person. I am going to say that over the time when people were dealing with all those issues of uninsurance and underinsurance and workers' compensation and all of that, not insurance, but unemployment insurance. Amanda was right there whenever you asked her a question. And I want to thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to help. And if you have any other issues, feel free to send them my way.
Thank you.
yeah, I would concur, Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes.
I really did lean on Amanda quite heavily and Michael Harrington as well. And the response was very, very fast and always to the point, and they took care of a lot of my constituents. So for the record, I really appreciate that and thank them both for their hard work. I know it had to been amazingly taxing, and it wasn't as though I was the only one asking either.
No,
So-
there were 180 of us
A day.
every day. Yes.
So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, with that, which one is first?
State Workforce Development Board.
So you are aware of what the Sunset Advisory Committee is, our responsibility is to try to figure out which boards and commissions we need and which ones we don't need and which ones might be better, their functions might be better performed elsewhere. And then if we do need them, what kinds of, are there any statutory changes that need to be made to actually reflect what is needed? So I know you knew that, but for people out there in the ether world, they might not know. So, thanks. Go ahead.
For the record, Amanda Wheeler, Legislative Liaison at the Department of Labor. I don't know if Tori is joining.
She's going to be here at 10.
Okay, great. Do we want to hold she chairs, or she is the Executive Director of the State Workforce Development Board, so I don't know if we want to hold that in case she has any comments she'd like to add.
Sure, that's a good idea.
Okay.
The next one is Youth and Agriculture, Natural Resources and Food Production Consortium. That's a mouthful.
Sure, so I'll let Dirk jump in here, but
Did you, is that one printed out?
so we did not provide a questionnaire.
Oh,
for that one,
okay, great.
In discussion with the team, no one was familiar with this. And so we don't believe that that group ever met.
When was it constituted? Do we know?
When we said-
I think it was older than that. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Dirk Anderson,
Yeah.
General Counsel for the Department of Labor, for the record. And I'm here, yes, because I have a longer institutional memory. But between, I've been with the department for 16 years. We talked to Sarah Boston, who's the workforce development director. Frankly, none of us had ever heard of this consortium. So to our knowledge, it has never met.
Okay,
What was that again? Sorry, I'm trying to,
It's number 2 on our agenda.
what number on the spreadsheet here? Labor, is it the Labor Board Review Panel?
Agriculture.
On good work already.
It's number 172.
Oh, yeah.
Got it.
So it's
Apologize.
in Title 21 supposedly.
Yeah.
oh, well,
But apparently doesn't exist.
well, I think that if we repeal it, if somebody comes forward and says, wait a minute, we've been meeting in the sky all these years.
So do you want to do this on a
No,
case basis or go through and then go
let's
back?
go through, I think, don't you, John?
Yeah, I mean,
We'll have a good discussion.
I'm reading 21 VSA 1152, and if the Department of Labor is unaware of it, it probably means it does not exist because the consortium is supposed to be comprised of employees of the Department of Labor.
Okay.
As well as other agencies. But yeah, it's supposed to be attached to the Department of Labor too, so.
All right. So, what's next on your list?
The next one on the agenda looks like the advisory council.
Yep, Labor Advisory.
I'm gonna let Dirk take this one as well. Has the institutional knowledge I don't have.
You, Amanda. So the Department of Labor Advisory Council, to my knowledge, last met, I believe it was during the Douglas administration. I don't believe it was ever convened during the Shumlin administration. And I did sit in on a few of those meetings, and I think the purpose of the council is to advise the commissioner on issues of concern to both the employer community and the labor community. I believe the council consists of 4 representatives from labor and 4 from employment or management. And when they did meet occasionally, to my recollection, it just didn't really result in a lot of concrete policy being created. And just sort of stopped meeting. I don't think anybody ever took any, definitive action one way or the other. I believe I don't know if all the members termed out. I mean, I'm sure they did at some point, but it has not met in probably 10 years, 9 or 10 years.
So your recommendation would be that we repeal it?
Well, I haven't really discussed it with the commissioner, but he hasn't, he's out of town.
Okay.
But he has made no effort to convene it. So I think, I'm not sure we have a recommendation,
Okay.
but it's currently not meeting.
Yeah, I don't want me to put you on the spot. I'm just sort of trying to get a feel for where you guys might see it. Okay.
Very legal reply.
I mean, I will say that if it's this body's will that the council commence meeting again, all the members would have to be reappointed because I'm sure all their terms have turned out.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, one of the things we try to do is if if the Department of Labor wanted it to meet, we'd want to know that in coming up with our decision. So, I mean, but it appears that at least there isn't a strong view of having it meet in the future.
That's fair to say.
Thank you.
Another lawyer reply.
Okay. Moving right along. We're going to get done with these before Tori gets here.
Sure. So the next one on the agenda appears to be the Labor Board Review Panel.
Yep.
And this is a panel that reviews make recommendations for appointment to the Labor Relations Board, which are appointed by the governor. This group meets on a as-needed basis when there are appointments that need to be made, and met as recently as just 2 weeks ago. There are a couple of terms that have expired on the panel or on the board. And so we don't see any legislative action needed here, and believe that this panel functions as it should, as needed.
It's interesting that it's called Labor Relations Review Panel as opposed to like nominating panel or.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a reason for that.
I don't know. I think perhaps because panel doesn't actually nominate labor relations board members. They review resumes, they solicit resumes, they pick people to interview and check references, and then they send a list of names to the governor's office. It's ultimately the governor's decision.
Right. Yeah, I just wondered that because it's judicial nominating board, which Senator Colmore and I serve on, is a nominating board, but it doesn't actually appoint anybody. It just makes recommendations to the governor. So I just was curious.
So I have a quick question. First of all, one of the members appears to be retiring from the role. The third member down, I believe, is going to be exiting. So you would need another person to fill that position. But more importantly, I guess, so humor me for a second. The governor has a vacancy on the Labor Relations Board. Why couldn't the applications or resumes or whatever go directly to the governor's office? Let the governor screen them. And then, I'm just having a little bit of trouble figuring out why I got another group here or another panel to do what the governor's office or the administration could do directly. Put the ad in the paper, you apply, or anybody who's interested apply, let the screening take place through the governor's office, let them check references and then make a recommendation.
Yeah, that's a great question. So your first question or point.
Could you do me a favor and just speak up just a little bit so I
Sure.
not really good hearing?
Yeah, so the court administrator is statutorily appointed, so whoever takes Patricia's place will replace her role on the panel. And then the reason for having this kind of screening committee, the idea is to make sure that there's input from all interested parties, so the administration, which is the commissioner, and then there's also appointees from labor and industry. So that kind of gives us a little more wholesome application review process rather than just forwarding directly to the governor.
Okay, so can I just push back on it briefly? As I understand it, the Labor Relations Board members are designated. I represent management, they represent the labor side of it, et cetera. So let's assume it's a management vacancy. Okay, I'm just making this up. I don't understand why the labor and employees are screening that applicant has nothing to do with them. And same thing, if we turn it around, you can say, well, who's the employee? We have an employee, a labor vacancy. The governor's office can screen those in concert with labor representatives. They can, pick up the telephone, they call, the state employees executive director and say, hey, we're considering this individual. What's the feedback? That kind of stuff. I'm not sure this one is, I might describe it as a little superfluous, that's all. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I would just want to clarify, and Dirk, please jump in here, but this review panel was created by the legislature, not by the department or administration. So I think, we're a bit neutral in terms of whether it's needed or not, but this was something that was put forward by the legislature.
So I should be chatting with these folks then?
If I may, the governor's statute was amended, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago, maybe longer, maybe 5, to specifically require that the review panel, so the 2 non-statutory members, the labor member and the employment member, those are appointed by the commissioner. The statute was amended, I think about five years ago, to require that the commissioner, prior to filling those vacancies, which are 2-year terms, solicit names for the panel member, for the labor and employment panel members from the respective labor and employer committees. So I guess what I'm saying is this body has fairly recently revisited this panel in the context of tweaking how members are appointed to it.
So along with that, so does this particular panel, when the folks' terms are coming up, do they go back through and in essence renominate them?
Members, the
The existing members?
2 members of the panel, this past go around when we had 2 vacancies, the labor and employer members had their terms had timed out.
Yeah.
So we did go through the process of soliciting names from, the various, the usual suspects, if you will, the NEA, the SEA on the labor side, the chambers on the employer side. And that's how Mr. Fannin and Ms. Strauss wound up on the panel.
So basically, this board only meets when there is a vacancy.
Correct. They have, prior to these 2 vacancies, the panel had met in 3 years.
So I don't know whether this will allay Matt's issues or not, but I liken this in many ways to the judicial nominating board. When there's a vacancy in Supreme Court, Superior Court, or the Public Service Department in terms of the chair, we meet as the JNB, and there are people on the judicial nominating board that are very prosecutorial inclined, if you will, and there's a lot of defense type people. So there are both sides, much like there would be labor and management. And when we interview potential applicants, everybody has a fair shot at asking whatever question they want to ask that applicant. So I don't see this as being disparate at all. I think it's just getting another set of eyes on a candidate and allowing the process to kind of encompass more folks. So
Okay,
I don't know whether that helps or not.
thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll have a chance to discuss it a little bit later.
Sure.
Thank you.
I do know that the per diems here are unusual in that they are, I think, $125 per person and $175 for the chair.
Yep.
Now that you mention that, John, I guess when we discussed this group, I think that's a valid concern or a valid item to discuss also. That's just my opinion.
Any more questions or concerns or comments on?
Who's the chair of that?
Of the labor relations review
Yes,
by the commissioner.
okay, thank you.
Paid then, I would think.
They get paid a state salary.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably these others, Pat Gable probably doesn't get a,
Yeah.
To my knowledge,
In fact,
since I've been doing this, nobody's ever requested payment.
Yeah,
because most of these are paid by,
there are no costs associated.
yeah.
Okay,
I think that would kick in if there was somebody from either the labor group or the employer group that was recommended to be on there, but wasn't compensated for their position elsewhere. Other than that, most of these people are paid by somebody.
Right. So, well, there was a technical correction to this section of the law in 2021. The last substantive change was in the special session of 2018, where it specifically says the commissioner shall request names of potential representatives of labor and employers from at least 3 Vermont labor organizations and 3 Vermont employee organizations. I think there was some controversy a couple of years ago about appointments to the labor relations.
yeah,
They're a big controversy, yeah.
So, and there was another change. For each individual the panel is considering forwarding to the governor, the panel shall interview the individual and contact at least one individual who can serve as a reference. So those were the 2 substantive changes that were made in that special session. Just in case anybody wants to know.
And I think was it the review panel or the board itself that used to be not divided between labor and management, but by political party? Because that change was made while I've been here, and because it used to be, it was divided by political party somehow instead of labor and management. And I don't remember if it was the review panel or the board itself. I think it was the review panel.
Boy, I don't remember that. So
I'll have to check that out. I'm just curious. Yeah, I'm just curious.
that change may predate me.
Well, I've been here since 2003, so it was somewhere around in there, but that's inconsequential. I was just curious.
It's a really, really long time.
Is he out to get me
I
today?
don't know. That meant that as a compliment.
It's okay. At breakfast, he was slinging things at me too.
But lovingly.
Okay. Any more questions, concerns on that one? Okay.
The passenger tramway board.
Great, so the passenger tramway board is comprised of 5 members, the commissioner of labor who acts as the chair of the board, and then 2 members from ski resorts or ski mountains, and then 2 public members. And the charge of that group is to essentially adopt rules governing construction, operation, and maintenance of tramway, or essentially ski lifts and tows, and things of that nature. So that's their main charge. And then to fund the passenger tramway program, there's a fee due state, which is set, can be set by the department, but the department chooses to kind of pull the board in to review that change each year and kind of approve it. Again, not something they are required to do, but just a way to get more input there. And so with that, the group meets about 3 times per year and can meet more as needed as things come up.
So I did have a few questions around this one that caught my attention was, well, one, just the total budget. I see it is broken down, but like, why would there be $28,000 of travel expense for a board like this? And could you elaborate a little bit more on a $414,000 budget?
Sure. So the passenger tramway division also funds 3 full-time employees within the Department of Labor who oversee all of the maintenance and inspections of lifts. They have that travel expenses a little more than if they were
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. They are what kind of employees?
full-time employees of the department.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And
They actually
Didn't
run
mean to
in the
interrupt
field
you.
and-
Yeah, they're field staff essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why you see that expense a little higher than most other boards, is because it does include the travel and things of that nature.
so that is more than just funding the 3 times a year that the
That's correct.
panel meets. It's also funding the travel that they have to go to when they inspect the lifts in all the ski areas.
That's correct. Yeah, this is the budget for the tramway program essentially, which is folded into, the board is folded into that program.
Right.
If that just funds the board, I want to be on that board.
Depends on where they're traveling. You know, if it's Omaha, Nebraska, who cares? But if it's Las Vegas, I guess I'm in.
Yeah, that,
Go ahead, Rob.
So, and how much of this, I don't know if I saw it, I'm assuming some of this is funded by fees by the industry?
Yes, yeah, and that's what I mentioned with the fee-due state. So each ski mountain or organization that has a tramway lift pays a portion per linear foot. I don't know if they're exact.
I don't know the number. I did go to the last meeting. I don't remember the number, but the ski resorts fund both the board and, which is, a very small part of it, and the program itself, the state employees within the department by paying a fee per linear foot of rope, wire rope, term.
It's interesting.
And there's also, that fee is adjusted upward for new construction or major renovations of lifts. So it's essentially a proportional funding mechanism where each resort kicks in according to the amount of lifts they have to fund the program.
So is in that, is the program self-sufficient funding wise? I mean, are there state tax dollars that are spent on this, or is?
It is entirely funded by the industry. There is no general fund money.
Thank you.
so I'm just curious about, if you're looking at lifts, Brattleboro Living Memorial Park has this little ski lift that goes up the side of the hill. And I just wondered if they also get inspected, because it is a tow that goes up. It isn't very long and it isn't very sophisticated, but it is there and it's open to the public.
I believe any tow open to the public, and that, that may be a little T-bar or rope tow, or platter lift, or even those little magic carpets they have in the learning areas. Those are all inspected by the state on an annual basis.
Good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So unless I'm missing a lot of news stories, I don't ever hear about very many accidents, deaths, injuries resulting from malfunctions of ski equipment, if you will, the tramway. Do you know how long this program has been in existence, and was it ever like different than it is now? In other words, were more people getting injured and hurt, and then this came along and the increases have dropped?
Program predates my tenure with the state, or at least with the Department of Labor. So it's been around a while. I don't know exactly how long.
I don't. I was able to chat with our Director of Worker Compensation and Safety, Steve Monahan, who this is part of his portfolio. And he mentioned that this came as a result of a fall off a lift when years ago, the bar,
Yep.
safety bar was not a requirement for ski mountains. And so the industry kind of asked for something of this nature to help kind of govern and make sure things were safe.
Okay, that's helpful. Again, I think we have a pretty good safety
Yeah.
record. I can't remember the last time I heard somebody had a serious injury as a result of a fall from a ski lift.
Maybe because we have this?
Well, that's my point, I guess. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
So that does prompt a question in my mind in that the changes in the industry, who is the motivating force behind that traditionally? Would it be this group or the insurance carriers? I'm just curious to know. I would imagine that things have changed enough in the industry that the insurance side of it is going to have a lot of input.
In terms of, so passenger tramways, chairlifts, like anything else, their construction and maintenance are governed by ANSI standards. So there's a national standard that all these things need to be constructed according to. In other states where there is no equivalent program, I believe the insurance companies are the drivers of safety inspection. I think the program's been effective, and the industry, I don't want to speak for the industry, but I think paying a fee to the state in order to ensure that their lifts are inspected is preferable, obviously, to having some sort of accident and then having their carrier come in after the fact and raising their premium or requiring them to make alterations.
and the bad publicity that would come from somebody getting injured or killed and then finding out, oh, it hasn't been inspected in 5 years. And I think about not the circus industry, but the industry who has little rides, that come around, and every so often one of them gets hurt, and the first question is, has it been inspected? And I think I remember one of them saying, no, it hadn't been inspected for some time. So I get everything you're saying. I'm also sure that they don't want the bad publicity. That, people aren't going to get on those things if they're concerned that they're going to get injured and hurt. So I think,
Yeah, I actually think it's very responsible of the industry to ask for this and ask to be inspected so that there is an objective external eye looking at their equipment. But yeah,
I'm certainly not going to belabor the point. I just, I would be curious to hear what the industry has to say in that regard, because there is a part of me that is wondering, is the industry having to sort of pay twice? I'm paying my insurance premiums, but yet I'm also paying, for this particular program. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'd be curious to know their take on it. The other part of it is do you folks, this group, do they act as a resource for the industry? Let's say that they're going to either put in a whole new line or upgrade an existing one. Do you provide technical assistance and things like that? Or is it purely basically oversight as far as adherence to?
I believe, the inspector's primary responsibility is inspecting each lift annually, and if there is an accident or a malfunction, responding to that, determining what went wrong. I'd have to check with Steve. I don't know, Amanda, do you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know they are heavily involved in the construction process, so There may be, you know, a portion of that that is advisement, but that's something we'll have to get back to you on.
This is very similar to our elevator inspections. I mean, we inspect elevators once a year. I think it's once a year. I see Mike Sherling's name on an elevator I use.
I mean, I think it's
This is once
important.
a year.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
I mean, I think it's important that they get inspected because, I mean, if you think about it, you know, most of these lifts aren't on the ground, they're up in the air, and if they malfunction, somebody could fall to their death. I mean, so I don't think we want that happening in Vermont. I mean, regardless of insurance liability that the skier may have or not have for that accident. I mean, that's just. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the other things they do as well is like when a lift does break down essentially or malfunction, there's the backup engines that are supposed to kick in to help get folks off the lift. So that's also a component of the lift inspection process, is making sure that those, you know, backup plans essentially are working.
And having been involved with ski lift inspections, I will applaud the inspectors for being very willing to, you know, come down to ski areas at a moment's notice to get the lift inspected so that they can operate during the season. Well, I mean, you know, they're not always in charge of their own schedule as, you know, different ski lifts come online.
Oh, right.
And I mean, you know, the big thing in the ski industry now is everybody's putting in new higher capacity lifts. So I think there's a lot of change going on, which requires the inspectors to do not only their annual inspections, but the inspections of new lifts.
And just for context, I know there's many ski areas, but on average, we hear about between 10 to 15 falls per season. And so across a state that operates, you know, hundreds of lifts a day, that's a pretty good indicator that this program is worthwhile.
I'm sorry, you got to 10 to 12 people injured. So you can get injured in a variety of ways. You know, you can be playing around and slip under the bar or showing off or something. But it's different if it's a mechanical failure. You know, the lift wire jams and then all the chairs flop around, or it's extremely windy weather and, you know, they're flying back and forth and the industry wants the business, so they're up there moving. The 10 or 12, do you have any sense of whether they're from mechanical issues or, I don't want to say customer error kind of things?
Yeah, we can look into that. I don't know how much data they collect on that. It's typically just a general number we receive from the team. But essentially, this is anyone who falls, not necessarily injured, right? So they could be 10 feet off the ground and they fall or higher up. But I think that does speak to the level of training that these folks, the lift mechanics and operators receive in terms of making sure that bars are secure, and that sort of thing. The area where you load onto the lift is clear and things of that nature.
So when you get off the lift at the end, you're not going to fall 30 feet. You're going to tumble forward, you know, that kind of thing as you're trying to get off. But somebody who's on the lift and falls 30 feet, that's a different story. I mean, that's, in my sense, more severe.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry.
Any more questions or concerns about this one?
Also,
And Rob, I appreciate your interest in hearing from the industry itself. I suspect that since the industry was the one that asked for it to be established, that they might support it.
Sure, but I didn't know that. They did, okay.
I think that's what Amanda said, is that after an accident,
Mhm.
they, many years ago, that, what's his name here? Steve. Steve?
Yeah, that's my recollection from Steve Monahan, and I'm happy to follow up to get you more details on that.
It's okay. Anything more on that one? Right.
The working group on state workforce development.
It's the only one left, right?
No, then we
No,
have to go
the-
back and do the state workforce development
There's
board.
the working group.
Oh,
and then
okay,
there's the
okay.
board. Oops. I have a printer in my office at where I work. It used to be this other guy's office and I just use it during the non-session. And there's a printer there and he hasn't been there for a year. And all of a sudden the printer goes like that and it's like his ghost is. I just thought of that when the printer over there started whining. Okay, sorry about that. I can't help myself sometimes. The working group.
This is the state development board subgroup, which was set out in Act 69 of 2017, and was required to report back on some findings and recommendations. And so the group did meet during the time before the report was due, submitted the report, and has not met since.
Did you recommend their repeal?
Yes, sir.
It's interesting that we don't write those into those sunsets or when we create working groups and task forces and stuff that are just designed for one report.
But we should.
We should, and we should start doing that all the time so that they don't hang around on the books.
Do you have any other boards and panels and commissions on the books that we should know about that you don't feel are valid or? Okay. Just asking.
There is the Employment Security Board.
Yeah,
I don't know
that's
if
here.
that's been reviewed previously.
I believe,
It hasn't. But we skipped that one for some reason.
What number is that, John?
173.
173.
and on my old one, it's 185. Beside mine, I have maintained. Get it.
I don't have anything, right?
Okay. And it says it was established by the emergency board?
Yeah.
Yep.
What do they do?
Employment Security Board has been around a very, very long time. I think they actually predate the They act as an appellate board for decisions of the unemployment insurance hearings examiners
Oh,
or appeals referees. So if somebody, sorry,
No, go ahead.
if someone receives an adverse decision regarding their unemployment benefits, they can appeal that to what the statute calls an appeals referee. They hold an evidentiary hearing. It's like an administrative law judge type setting. The decisions of that appeals referee are appealable to the Employment Security Board, and they meet weekly. Generally, not every week, but they generally meet weekly. They review the evidence in the file. They hear oral argument from the parties and issue decisions, which their decisions are appealable to the Supreme Court. And I serve as counsel to the Employment Security.
I believe according to our spreadsheet, this is federally required anyway, so I'm not sure we have any standing here.
That's correct. The U.S. Department of Labor requires each state that has an unemployment insurance program federally funded, which are all the states, to have what the feds call a lower authority and a higher authority appeals process. The lower authority would be the appeals referee, the higher authority, in the case of Vermont, is the Employment Security Board. So without that board, somebody else would have to serve that function, some other panel or court.
It looks like we keep that one. Sounds like.
So can I mention a couple things briefly? I've been before this board as an employer. And it is a challenging, I mean, an employer shows up too, right?
If it's a dispute involving
Right.
a former employee and an employer, they are both invited to the hearing.
Right, so I've been there. I attended before the Employment Security Board as an employer. And I had an employee who was filing for unemployment. And we had a dispute with the determination, the initial determination that they had made. So it's not just for employees, it's for employers.
Correct.
And then the second thing is, it's an odd name, an Employment Security Board. Is there a more appropriate name for that? It's-
I don't have a recommendation, but there may well be. Employment Security
But it's an,
Board, it goes way back to, I think, the 40s. The department, what is now the Department of Labor, used to be a very long time ago, the Department of Industrial Relations. It then became the Department of Employment Security. It then became the Department of Employment and Training. And most recently, in 2005, it merged with what was the Department of Labor and Industry to be the Department of Labor. But the name Employment Security Board has never changed. It may well be time to revisit that. We haven't really given that any thought, but it's
really
an odd name.
it's really an appellant, I mean, appealing board. I got turned down for as an employee, I got turned down for unemployment. I'm appealing to a higher board or a higher group. An Employment Security Board, that just doesn't do it for me. And I don't want to take any more time, but maybe the chairs of the two committees might be willing to take a look at maybe a name change in the future. So that's, during the legislative session, that's all. We wouldn't get rid of we can't get rid of the board, but we can maybe request a more appropriate name, that's all. So thank you, I appreciate it very much.
Rob?
So I guess while we're 175, for some reason we didn't address that either. It's Occupational Safety and Health Review Board.
Before we jump forward, I said one more question about the Employment Security Board. Do we know what their per diems are? I know they're set by the Emergency Board, but.
I believe their per diems are still $50.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, I just was wondering, the Occupational Safety and Health Review Board, I mean, it certainly sounds like something that would be kept. And obviously, we didn't ask you to address it, but
It's also federally required.
where do you see that on the
It says X under federally required.
Disregard that question. That X under that column, right?
Yeah.
Take that off. the
That's
Zoom,
why you're in that higher chamber. If there's a lot
I'm
going
understanding the
on.
columns correctly. That's exactly what I mean.
The Occupational Safety and Health Review Board is, if you want to know, I'm sorry, perhaps I'm
Sure.
volunteering more information than you hear, but when VOSHA issues a citation to an employer and that citation is contested, it is heard by the Occupational Safety and Health Review Board. So it's, even though it's funded, VOSHA is a 50-50 federal state match. I believe part of that money goes to fund the VOSHA Review Board, which has a half-time clerk, and It's 3 members of the public appointed by the governor. They generally hire a hearing officer on an as-needed basis from a list of local attorneys to hear these appeals. And then the hearing officer holds a hearing, does findings, and those findings and his decision or her decision is subject to review by the board itself.
That's in my former life. I was before this board as an employer representative. That's why.
Before we jump, well, this wasn't on that one necessarily, but I did have a question about the Labor Relations Review Panel. I wrote down here that they have $125 per diem, but that's the Labor Relations Board. That's not the panel. The panel,
True.
I don't know what their per diem is, but the review panel, the nominating panel. But it's the Labor Relations Board that has the 125.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't recall any member of the review panel submitting an invoice.
Right, okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to, because it says on here, there are no costs associated with it, but then when we were talking, I wrote down 125, 175. But that's for the board itself, yeah. Okay, great, thanks, sorry. Did you have another question about that?
No,
Okay,
I'm fine. Thank
so
you.
Rob, I think you wanted to move on.
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
Where-
What did you want to know?
So we are, it looks like we are now on the Workforce Development Board. Do we want to wait for Tori? She'll be here at 10 o'clock and it's just about 10, or she'll be here as soon as,
Couple minutes, sure.
Yeah, we can
take a couple
brief
minute break. Is that okay?
Chairs that board, correct?
She's the executive director of it.
Oh, yeah, okay. So that'd be important to have her. input.
And we have, she has talked with us about it and will probably recuse herself when it gets to deciding whether to repeal or maintain, but will be part of the discussions because she has a lot of information. So
So,
she has talked to us about that.
so while we're waiting for Tori, in the interest of doing our work efficiently, do we want to render a decision on the other ones?
No, I'd like to take a
Oh,
5-minute
okay.
break
All
here.
right, I'm